أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموت ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم قالوا طائركم معكم إن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلهة أن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاءتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيكم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم أرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم فلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا شريك لهم ولهم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لا يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إنا أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قول من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين ونعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره نكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب فلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون अवलम यरल इंसानु अन्ना खलकनाहु मिन नुतफतिन फइदा हुवा खसीमुम मुबीन वज़रबना मसलन वनसी खल्क़ह क़ाल मन युह्यिल इज़ामा वहिय रमीम कुल युह्यिहा अल्लज़ी अंशअहा अव्वल मर्रह वहुवा बिकुल्लि खल्क़िन अलीम الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العليم.
औरों ने शहे करबला को जिंदगी का भरोसा नहीं है। औरों ने शहे करबला को जिंदगी का भरोसा नहीं है। जो भी गिरता है इस गम में आंसू कोई बेकार जाता नहीं है। औरों ने शगे करबला को जिंदगी का भरोसा नहीं है। जब जले होंगे ख़ैमे हरम के, जब छीने होंगी सर से रिदाएं, जब जले होंगे ख़ैमे हरम के, जब छीने होंगी सर से रिदाएं, क्या बने होंगे सैदानियों पर, क्या बने होंगे सैदानियों पर। वो समा दिल से जाता नहीं है। औरों ने शगे करबला को जिंदगी का भरोसा नहीं है। करबला में जो जाएगी ज़ैनब, क्या बताएगी बाई को ज़ैनब। करबला में जो जाएगी ज़ैनब, क्या बताएगी बाई को ज़ैनब। छुट के जिंदा से जो आ रहे हैं, छुट के जिंदा से जो आ रहे हैं, उनमें प्यारी सकीना नहीं है। आओ रोने शहे करबला को, जिंदगी का भरोसा नहीं है। सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि मोहम्मद व
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. If everyone can open their Qur'ans, if it's on their phones or if they wish to be able to take a Qur'an. The chapter is number 40, Surat Al-Mu'min, also known as Surat Al-Ghafir. Chapter number 40. We will start with verse 28. We will just look through certain other verses until we reach around verse 45. So if you have the app open or if you have your Qur'ans with you, we will look from Surat Al-Mu'min, chapter number 40, from verse number 28. For the love of our fifth Imam Mohammad al-Baqir, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وقال رجل مؤمن من آل فرعون يكتم إيمانه أتقتلون رجلا أن يقول ربي الله وقد جاءكم بالبينات من ربكم وإن يكو كاذبا فعليه كذبه فإن يكو صادقا يصبكم بعض الذي يعدكم إن الله لا يهدي من هو مسرف كذاب. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Our gathering this evening is to commemorate the martyrdom anniversary of our fifth Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. We extend our condolences to the Imam of our time, to all of our maraji' and ulama, to the mu'mineen and mu'minat, and to the whole of humanity, for the martyrdom anniversary of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam is a martyrdom anniversary that the whole of humanity can also share their grief in. Imagine this Friday coming, insha'Allah, our master and awaited Savior returns. May Allah hasten his appearance and allow us to be alongside with him. Imagine the Imam comes. What role do you and I envisage for ourselves in assisting the Imam of our time? Every individual has their part to play. No matter their age, no matter their physical strength, no matter their intelligence, no matter their gender, no matter their history, every one of us has a role to play in establishing the imamate and the justice of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu on earth. Often a person belittles the potential that exists within them. They say to themselves, what can I as one individual do? Often a person asks themselves, what can I as one individual do in the face of this tide of oppression and injustice that is overflowing over the face of the earth? Surah Al-Mu'min, chapter number 40 of the Quran, is the story of one individual, famously known as Mu'min min al-Fir'aun, that one single believer from the community, from the people loyal to Pharaoh, in how this individual stood up and ensured that his voice was heard, such that his story was captured in the Quran throughout the ages, such that until today and until the end of time, we understand that the role of one individual is strong enough to be able to stand up even against the tide of a Pharaoh. A person can stand with truth, with Prophet Musa alayhi salam, and have the ability to inspire hundreds and thousands of others, and that by virtue of his one action, Allah Jalla Jalaluhu can step in to protect that individual, such that he is not physically abused by the tyrants of his time, and such that that story of his courage reverberates until the end of time. This particular story we will first observe through Surah Al-Mu'min, and then try to reflect on in the time of our fifth Imam Mohammad al-Baqir, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Open your Qur'ans inshaAllah, Surah Al-Mu'min, chapter number 40, verses 28 to around verse number 45. We won't look at all of these ayat for the sake of brevity, but we will try to look at some of these ayat just to be able to have a glimpse of the story of the mu'min of Al-Fir'aun, that then gives us insight and encouragement as to the potential of every single human being, irrespective of time and place or the extent of the tyranny that is surrounding them. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, verse number 28. وَقَالَ رَجُلٌ مُؤْمِنٌ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَكْتُمُ إِيمَانَهُ أَتَقْتُلُونَ رَجُلًا أَنْ يَقُولَ رَبِّيَ اللَّهُ وَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ. And a believing man of Pharaoh's people, who had hidden his faith, said, what? Will you slay a man, meaning Musa alayhi salam, because he says, my Lord is Allah, and indeed he was brought to you, or he has brought to you clear arguments from his Lord? Are you going to kill this man when he has actually brought evidence for his argument? If he is a liar, Musa alayhi salam, if he is a liar, then upon him is his lie for lying about his God, for lying to you. It is upon him. And if he be truthful, there will befall you some of that which he threatens you with. Surely Allah does not guide him who is extravagant, who is a liar. In the subsequent sequence of verses, you will see Mu'min al-Fir'aun lays a series of arguments to Pharaoh and the people of Pharaoh in order to give Musa alayhi salam the freedom to be able to preach, and for those who believe to let them believe, and those who want to disbelieve, let them disbelieve. But don't persecute, but don't target Musa alayhi salam and Banu Israel for their desires in believing. For example, verse number 30-31, Mu'min min al-Fir'aun says, I fear for you what will fall or fell upon Nuh's people. Ad's people and Thamud's people. I fear for you, أَخَافُ عَلَيْكُمْ يَوْمَ التَّنَادِ. I fear for you the day in which people will be called out. The day in which there will be a caller, a munadi, who's going to call out and say, where is Pharaoh? Where are those who have persecuted my prophets? I fear this day for you. Similarly, from verse number 38 onwards, you will see a number of other arguments. For the sake of brevity, I won't endeavor too much on these, but just to show you from verse number 45. What happened to Mu'min al-Fir'aun? Was he killed? Was he persecuted? Just by virtue of him standing up against Pharaoh and against the hordes of Pharaoh. Verse number 45, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَوَقَاهُ اللَّهُ السَّيِّئَاتِ مَا مَكَرُوا وَحَاقَ بِآلِ فِرْعَوْنَ سُوءُ الْعَذَابِ. So Allah protected him from the evil consequences of what they had planned against him, and the most evil punishment actually took over Pharaoh's people. For you and I, the story and the lesson of the mu'min from Al-Fir'aun is that one person can stand, and that person has the capacity to speak truth to power, to organize people in such a way that they go towards truth, and then Allah Jalla Jalaluhu can protect him from even the gravest of pharaohs of that time. During the time of the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, especially in the early times of his movement in Mecca, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi had people from amongst the community that could represent him, represent his movement to certain demographics. We've mentioned this previously in passing, but we need to mention it again in order to explain about one of the most peculiar times of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. The Prophet had certain people representing him in each demographic. The Prophet is one human being. He cannot be in every location at every time. Sometimes you need a wasita. Sometimes you need someone who is the middleman. If you're not going to listen to me, then maybe you'll listen to him. You are closer to him. You are closer to this person than me. It may be that his argument reaches you. You have more time with that person to listen to them. You don't hold the same grudges against me that you might another. The Prophet, being a master tactician, understood this. For the elites of Quraysh, you had Abu Talib salamullahi alayhi. Abu Talib alayhi salam was known to be amongst that group of people. They had his ear, he had theirs. And so he had the opportunity to spread the message on behalf of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi without compromising the Prophet's safety. Similarly, amongst the women folk, you had Lady Khadija alayhi salam, who of course for the initial period was considered to be the queen of the Quraysh by virtue of her business prowess, by virtue of the good that she was doing to help the people of the community. She of course had the ears of the women folk. And the youth, there were two people in particular. One was of course Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salamullahi alayhi. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. And amongst those who were, let's say, rough and tumble, those who were a little bit more outside of the Quraysh, they were the gang members, they were those who were the highway robbers. You had Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, grand companion, who could reach out to people of his mindset. Earlier in his life, he was a highway robber, and then eventually, obviously, left that lifestyle. The point is that the Prophet understood that there were certain people who had the ears of people that had the ability to reach places in which maybe he could not at that time. Whenever you build a movement, whenever you build your strategy, and you want people to listen to your endeavors, you also need to be able to build people around you who can reach where you may not necessarily be able to reach, the groups that you can't reach. No movement can be built without it. Knowing this was our fifth Imam Muhammad al-Baqir salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam's time was particularly difficult for him because the scholars of Medina al-Munawwara rejected a young Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, who began preaching independently or semi-independently of his father's time from the age of 13 to 18 years old. You have all of these big scholars, tabi'een, sometimes even companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who were still living up until the time of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. And then you have a young man. The scholars of Medina al-Munawwara rejected a young Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam because of his age, number one. And number two, because Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam used to quote a hadith from the Prophet, from Imam Ali alayhi salam, directly without a chain of narration. For you and I, that is normal, ordinary, of course. Who knows the Prophet better than Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam? But if you were a 60-year-old tabi'i from the second generation who had spent his lifetime listening to a hadith at the feet of the ashab, or you were a sahaba themselves and you have spent all this time saying, I have heard from such and such who heard the Prophet say, the veracity of your narration is based upon the chain of narration. Here comes a 13-year-old boy who says, Qara Rasulullah, and then delivers the hadith. Now what's important to give context is that, as we've mentioned in the previous night here, from the time of the first and second caliphs, they had prohibited the recording of ahadith. It was only until the time of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, during the khilafat of Caliph Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, when that prohibition was lifted. So now everybody is now scrambling to write a hadith. So who are you going to get hadith from? The companions and the second generation Muslims, the tabi'een, who said, we heard from such and such a companion that the Prophet said. So they're all writing the chain of narration. They're all saying, I heard the Prophet say. I heard from such and such who heard the Prophet say. And then you have this young 13-year-old, 15-year-old man who is just saying, Qala Rasulullah, Qala Amir al-Mu'mineen, Salamullahi alayhim. You can imagine what was taking place. People rejected Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam en masse. And this, of course, was a tragic situation when it came to establishing the wilayah of our fifth Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. The fifth Imam alayhi salam understood how to navigate this circumstance. He partnered, teamed up with his own mu'min at that time in order to be able to establish his imamate, in order to help the people of Medina al-Munawwara understand who this divine Imam salamullahi alayhi truly is. Who was that mu'min that he teamed up with? The great companion Hazrat Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. We have had the honor of writing a book on Jabir, and it is available here. In this book we detail the stages in which Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam utilized this great companion. Jabir, as you know, fought in more than a dozen battles with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a master of ahadith and narrations of ahadith, was someone who was utmost trustworthy amongst the people of Medina al-Munawwara, such that when Jabir used to sit inside Masjid Nabawi, he used to give fatwa, people would sit at his feet and listen to him very attentively. When you have someone like this, you need to be able to utilize him to help people to understand your wilayah, to understand your imamat. There were a number of stages that Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam and Jabir employed together in order to establish the imamat of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. Stage number one. The first stage was that at every given opportunity, Jabir used to announce the salutations that were sent from the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. to Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. We have numerous narrations in different circumstances in which Jabir used to convey those salutations of the Prophet. Imagine you're a 13-year-old boy, a 15-year-old man, and you are being told by the longest living companion, the greatest companion of the Prophet gave salutations to you. He did this publicly in so many different circumstances. He would sit on the streets and Jabir used to call out, "Where is Al-Baqir? Where is Al-Baqir?" People used to say he is hallucinating. Jabir said, "I had never once hallucinated in my life. I tell you that the Prophet told me that I will live to meet this man. I want to meet him." And when Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam would walk to him, Jabir used to say to him, "You have the walk of the messenger, your grandfather sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi." Imagine. And he used to heap the salutations. The hadith say, Jabir used to kiss the feet of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. Elderly companion, greatest companion living, kisses the feet of a 13-year-old boy. This was the first thing that they used to do in order to convey. The hadith I'm going to read that gives you a picture of what was taking place. And this hadith is authenticated by Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Abul Qasim al-Khu'i rahmatullahi ta'ala alayh in his phenomenal series of works called Mu'jam al-Rijal. Sayyid al-Khu'i was a master of Ilm al-Rijal, the chains of narrations, and when it comes to Jabir, his section on his biography, he writes this particular hadith. This hadith is from our sixth Imam, As-Sadiq, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Our sixth Imam alayhi salam says the following. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam would regularly visit Jabir. Who would visit whom? Imam would visit Jabir. Not the companion visiting the Imam. The Imam visiting companion. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam would regularly visit Jabir, showing him great honor. Imam showing great honor to an ordinary companion, ordinary human being, non-ma'soom. Afterwards, the Imam would sit with the people of Medina and narrate to them from his father, Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam, from the Prophet, from Imam Ali alayhi salam. But the people of Medina would say, "For sure, we have not seen anyone as bold as this man." So when Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam saw what they were saying about him, he would narrate traditions to them from the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, instead of just from his father. Initially he would narrate narrations from Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. They would say, "He's too young, he's 13, what do you mean he's narrated? Who is this person to narrate from Imam al-Sajjad?" So then Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam would narrate directly from the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. But the people of Medina would say, "Certainly we have not seen anyone lie more than this person to narrate from someone he has not even seen." This is what the people of Medina used to say against Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. This is the hadith of the sixth Imam. When Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam began to narrate from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, the people of Medina started to believe in him. So the Imam started to narrate from whom? Jabir, a companion. An Imam is narrating, Qala Jabir. Imam would narrate from Jabir. Then the people of Medina believed in him and testified to his veracity. But I swear by Allah, Jabir was the one who would actually come and learn from him, Al-Baqir, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Do you understand what's going on? Can you see? Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam was not believed for a period of time because he was too young, because he was narrating directly from people who he had not met, not at least in this worldly realm. In order to establish the imamat of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, there needed to be a veracious, trustworthy person. Initially, Imam would sit at the feet of Jabir and he would narrate from Jabir. And there are dozens of narrations we have quoted here where Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam would narrate from Jabir. Jabir says such and such about the ahkam of Shahr Ramadan. Jabir says such and such about the ahkam of Hajj. Jabir says. Do you know what eventually happened? Jabir started to quote from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. Can you see the switch? Previously, Jabir is narrating from the Prophet. Jabir stops. Jabir starts saying, Qala Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. Al-Baqir says such and such. According to Imam al-Baqir, this is the hadith. According to Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, this is the hukum. According to Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, this is the tafsir. The whole of Medina is seeing this switch from Imam quoting Jabir, Jabir quoting Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. And then comes the last stage. Do you know what Jabir starts to do? Jabir starts to declare the wilayah of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. It is an authority upon you. I was there when the ayah was revealed. Obey Allah and the Messenger, wa ulil amri minkum, and those vested from authority amongst you. We would ask, Ya Rasulullah, who are those vested with authority? Until eventually Jabir narrates, the first is Ali ibn Abi Talib. After him comes Imam al-Hassan, Imam al-Hussein, Imam al-Sajjad. And then is this man, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi majma'een. Medina al-Munawwara shifted. The thoughts, the understanding, the cognition shifted because of a mu'min who was so trustworthy, so authoritative, that when he spoke, they listened to him. This is very important to understand in our own times. You and I often ask ourselves, what can I do for an Imam Ma'soom? How can I, a lowly human, filled with sins upon my shoulders, how can I help an Imam of my time? The Quran provides us with the example of Mu'min al-Fir'aun. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam's imamat amongst the laity, amongst the scholars of Medina al-Munawwara, was established through Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari. Imagine what you and I can do for the Imam of our time today and tomorrow. Let no one think that they are insignificant, that they do not have a role to play in this movement of Allah's, in this movement of the Quran, in this movement of the Prophet, in this movement of the Imam. And this is why these stories of the Quran and Ahadith are so important. To make sure that we know them, to read them to our children, to ensure our children know of them. Because when they see what has been established in the past, they're given confidence as to what they can do. Hadith of our fifth Imam, Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, is a hadith where he says, meeting with one person whom I trust gives me more strength to my soul than the amount of work that I may put in with my hands for 1 year. How much effort is there in your hands for 1 year's worth of work? Meeting with one mu'min who is as-sadiq al-amin means more to him than all of that 1 year's worth of actions. Once Imam alayhi salam met an elderly Jabir. By this time Jabir, his illnesses were overtaking him. He asks him, how are you doing? Jabir says, I reached a point in my life when I now want illness more than health, and I want death more than I want life. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam responds and says, oh Jabir, don't say this. I, al-Baqir alayhi salam, prefer to say, I prefer whatever state Allah decides for me. If He wants for me at this moment health, I am satisfied with His decree. If he wants for me illness, I am satisfied for his decree. If he wants life for me, then I am pleased with life. And if he wishes death for me, then I am pleased with death. Even at this ripe old age, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam was teaching Jabir. Imagine then the conversations between Jabir and Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam about the events of Karbala. Jabir is the first individual to become a za'ir of Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam on the day of Arba'een. But it was Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam who was in those tents. Imam was maybe but 3 years old at that time. And you can imagine the way in which you and I wail over Sakina bint al-Husayn, and the way in which she loved her father, and the way in which she would have to have seen her father's head upon a spear. Can you imagine Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam having to see his father, a Sajjad, in chains, with weights upon his neck and upon his wrists, bounded and being taken from city to city, paraded, as they throw stones at him, as they hurl insults at him, as they try to sell him off as a slave. This is what Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam had to see. Imam al-Baqir was eventually poisoned by Hisham ibn Abdul Malik. You can imagine as the poison is running through his body. You can imagine as he is turning from this way to that. You can imagine he is still remembering his father. You can still imagine that he is remembering his grandfather. He is suffering in pain. But you can imagine he is looking towards Karbala and remembering when arrow after arrow after arrow is being shot into the body of Imam al-Husayn. When they throw a stone at his forehead. When they kick him over. When they grab his beard and yank him towards him. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam would have been in this tent. It is narrated from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam that when Zuljana, the horse of Imam al-Husayn, ran back towards the tents, Imam says that when he was neighing and screaming in his own language at what he has had to observe, Zuljana was crying out, "What type of people kill the grandson of their own messenger and prophet?" ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam. We ask for Ya Allah, allow us to be alongside him at all times in our life and in our death. If we are to pass away from this world before his coming, Ya Allah, raise us from our graves so that we can partake in the victories of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. We ask for Ya Allah, grant us the ziyarah and intercession of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam fi dunya wal akhirah. Whatever our hajat are, Ya Allah, accept them bihaqqi Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam. And we ask you, Ya Allah, in the final moments of our life, we die in the love of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In honor of our fifth Imam, let us recite a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.